This demo will show the local language model coordinator, which basically detects user intent, and then based on user intent, it recommends and launches um, a specialist language model to assist the user with their task when the user basically indicates that they need help. So let's take a look at how this works. This one has GUI and it's in PowerShell. Um, so as you can see, it's checking if the coordinator language model is started. And if it's not, it's starting it now. It uses cobalt.cpp as the engine running the language models. And as you can see, we are using OpenOrca Mistral 7B version for the coordinator AI. And as you can see, I'm already interacting with a window. So basically, there's a listener that detects what kind of windows I have open. And based on that, it makes two API calls to the model itself. And it basically says, okay, the user is likely doing some development. What's the model that it's recommended for that? Now, the model recommendation comes from an CSV file that I've created. And I only have two models now. Ultimately, what happens is you pointed to the models that are specializing in specific field. So for example, the coder obviously is for programming, and then there's a generalized model. If there's a text summarizer or Excel formula helper and etc., you can just keep adding them here. There's also download URLs that you can specify, so the coordinator itself can download it for you. And there's a main URL, so you can see how the model is used and etc. Anyway, back to the demo. So as you can see, we've been interacting with CSV, and now the recommendation, it was OpenOrca before, but now we can see that that's switched to Coder. So it's important to note that this is based on the last 5 active apps, and obviously this can be changed. So if I click on Visual Studio, we can see that once again, we're processing intent, and it says successfully processed intent. If we take a look down here, and we're still in the coder territory, right? So obviously I'm coding in PowerShell and etc. So the chat will show up here once the model is launched. So let's launch the model and see what happens. Now, this launches another instance of Cobalt CPP, and obviously it's on a different port. And there's a port handling that's built into the solution here. And then once the new instance is launched, you can see that the web form that is embedded in the PowerShell GUI here has changed. And unfortunately, the zoom is a little bit funky here, so I'll just zoom out a little bit. That's still a work in progress. But you can see my coordinator runs actually on port 5001, and then my specialist is running on 5003. So right now I'm interacting with the specialist. The coordinator itself is meant to be behind the scenes, so I never really expose it, even though there's a web endpoint for him as well. So anyway, so we now have the coder, and you could ask it anything. So if I say, what does web view refresh do? And this is like a brand new, yeah, so it tells you it's that's pretty apt. Okay, so yeah, so now we have loaded the specialist and I can interact with it. And the reason why we're doing this obviously is to try and stay local, and we're trying to also get some decent functionality, like a decent code assistance from a smaller model that can obviously run locally. So what's going to happen is I think eventually uh, this type of coordinator logic will be built probably on the hardware level, like loading and unloading of models. Everybody will be looking to interact with models in some shape or form, so it would probably drastically change hardware. We'll have larger memory buses and etc. So regardless, let's take a look at what happens if I, for example, change right here and I go back to, so we're still in a PowerShell field here, but if I start browsing something else that is not PowerShell, let's take a look at Word. So I'm trying to insert table of content for Word right now. So we're now processing. Actually, it's still working on it because I have the two language models running, and it's a little bit slower. But what's going to happen is it will detect that I'm trying to interact and figure out what's going on with Word. So we're still in coder territory because this is based on the last 5 active apps. There's programmable ways here too, but at this stage, I'm essentially letting the coordinator language model figure out what I'm trying to do. But as you can see now, it actually switched over to OpenOrca, right? So if I close my coder, and in a perfect world, what I'll do is I'll clean the cache here as well, but let's do that manually for now. So we're just doing a new session here, and that clears the cache. As you can see, I don't even have the coder running. But anyway, so let's launch OpenOrca and see what happens. Now, that's probably going to launch on 50,004. I need to add a event handler here. Basically, as we're switching to model, I don't have good event handling over here as well. But anyway, now you can see that we have launched OpenOrca here. And now we're interacting with OpenOrca because we were looking at some Word stuff. Basically, it says table of contents, how do you do that, format a table, and that type of thing, right? So let's see. Microsoft. You got to keep in mind the OpenOrca is a pretty generalized model, right? And it's only 7B. So I mean, it's pretty good response. I should zoom out. Yeah, it gives you pretty good response, but keep in mind that it's limited. So the idea here is to have a word specialist, to have Excel specialist, programming specialist, and etc. And through this coordinator logic handler, just to load them dynamically. Anyway, that's all I wanted to show. Cheers.